Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here, and welcome to the Canon EOS C300 Mark II video tutorial series. In this first video in this series, I want to talk to you about some of the new stuff having to do with the camera system. And by the way, in another video, we're going to talk about that monitor over there, the DPV-2410. It's amazing, and used with this camera system, a perfect combination on set. Let's talk a little bit about the camera body first. First of all, the improved handle here. To me, it's a big deal. We've got a lot of taps in here. There's 3 cold shoes on the camera system, so we have a lot of options really built for this camera body. And you'll see the form factor is very similar to what we're used to with our Cinema EOS cameras. So one of my favorite things with the camera body itself is this little button here, and it illuminates all of the other buttons on the camera body, and it toggles. And this is great when you're on dark sets and you're shooting at nighttime. Start-stop buttons, bright red, recess buttons, and also very tactile. They're grouped together in certain ways so you know what each of them are. And even though we have 22 assignable buttons on the camera system, they are assigned the functions that a camera operator would want to get to and group together in a way that makes a lot of sense. So over here we have ND filters. Over here we have magnification, peaking, zebra, waveform. Then we have ISO gain, shutter, slow and fast frame rate. Again, you can reassign those. On the camera body itself, we have 11 assignable buttons. On the monitor unit, we have 10, and then there's 1 on the grip unit on the side. So very, very customizable overall. These buttons are also silent, so that's also great when you're making changes on a production. Now I'm just going to go ahead and show you the back of the camera a little bit. So battery system over here, we open that up, we've got a different battery system. It's definitely beefier because we've got double processors in here, and we're recording 4K internally. We need to power this camera the right way. So that's what we have in there. And then over here, we have our media. And if you're used to using the C300 and C500, you're familiar with compact flash cards. These are CFast 2.0 cards. Physically, they look the same, but they are designed for much, much, much higher data rates. And of course, with this camera system, we're dealing with high resolutions, high data rates. We're recording up to internally 4K, and we can also do 2K RGB 444 recordings at up to 12-bit. So let's go ahead and take a look at our terminals on the camera. And the biggest change right here is our power. We have a LEMO style connector. It's a positive locking connector. That's really important on sets. That way it's not going to accidentally be pulled out. I'd still have a battery in the bay for safety always, but this is a big improvement for me overall. And then your other terminals are the ones that you're used to. We do have Genlock. We obviously have time code. There's a remote terminal. We also have a terminal here for HDMI. And then we have these 2 terminals here. We have a MON terminal or monitor terminal, and then we have a record out terminal. And we can do actually simultaneous raw out on this camera system. The real difference between these 2 terminals is the record out is always a clean signal. And it doesn't have to be 4K raw that's being sent out of the camera. And the monitor out, we can add additional information to that output, things like on-screen displays. The last thing I want to show you are the video and audio cables. They're detachable on both sides, monitor unit and camera body, and they're the same cables. So you just have to make sure when you're plugging video into video here, it's video on the monitor unit, and the same thing for audio, but you don't have to match them up in terms of numbers or anything like that. So now that we've actually taken a look at some of the stuff that I really like on the exterior of the camera, it's time to jump in and take a look at the menu structure. So camera setup menu, you haven't seen this one before, extended ND range. Now what's great about this camera system is we have our standard 2, 4, and 6 stops of ND. But if we go into this menu, we can turn on an extended ND range, and we can actually activate 8 and 10 stops of ND as well. So another thing I want to talk about is something that we do every single time we turn on our Cinema EOS cameras, and that's an ABB or an automatic black balance. If we go into the menu and we look at it, it says attach a body cap. To me, it's a standard step any single time we use our Cinema EOS cameras. Every single time we turn them on or there's some big change, big ISO change, go from inside to outside, any of those things, do an ABB. It'll make a big difference in terms of where your black levels are. So just above ABB, we have focus, and I'm not going to get into that right now in this video. We have an entire video dedicated to it in this series. The autofocus capabilities of this camera system are amazing. So we'll talk about that a little later. So now I'm going to go ahead and step out of the camera setup menu, and we're going to talk about the next menu, custom picture. And if you've used the Cinema EOS cameras in the past, C100, C100 Mark II, C300, C500, then you're used to seeing that button on the side of the camera body, left side of the camera body. And I think that what they've done now with this camera, especially with all of the options for painting in camera and presets, makes a lot more sense to have a dedicated custom picture menu in the main menu system. Now this is a little bit different if you've been using Cinema EOS cameras for a while. This is really the menu where we're getting into all of our recording options. And again, we're going to have a dedicated video having to do with those options in this series. But it's where we're setting our system frequency. This is truly a world camera. This is where we actually set up the camera so we can push RAW out, 4K RAW if we want to from the camera. Our color space for 4K RAW, frame rates, our resolutions and color sampling, our bit rates, which you can choose based on certain settings, and then they're locked in based on other settings in the camera system. Special recording, relay, double slot. So some of these things, again, if you're used to Cinema EOS cameras, were inside of the other functions menu. They're now here in this dedicated menu. So let's go into the next menu, which is assistant functions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this is where we have things like peaking, magnification. This is also, most importantly to me in this menu, where we access our LUTs or lookup tables. And we will go into this menu when we talk a little bit more about custom pictures later on and also how to activate the LUTs, but they do sit inside of this menu as well. And then we've got system setup, and this is where we have things like being able to back up the camera system. We can set our time zone, our clock, and also for me, the most important thing inside of this menu, assignable buttons. And if I go into this menu here, you'll see that it is grouped based on these different buttons that are on different parts of the camera system. And we have a fourth option in here for a remote controller, and this is for the RCV 100. And then the last menu item here is the My menu. And what this allows you to do is create a customized menu that you can get to quickly and easily for the things that you like to access all of the time. So that's a basic overview of some of the new stuff and how the menus are grouped in the C300 Mark II.